Hi, everyone. My name is John Gold, and for a very long time now, I've been an advocate for 9/11 justice, which means that I recognize the fact that we were lied to about 9/11. I've been fighting for truth, accountability, and justice for as long as I can remember now. I've been fighting for the 9/11 first responders for as long as I can remember now. They're still fighting for health care and to ensure that they have funding past 2020. Anyway, I didn't write anything down for this. All I did was write down particular subjects that I wanted to talk about to you, to everybody. This might be a long video, it might be a short one, but I just have some things that I have to say. I'm not a partisan individual. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not part of the Green Party. I'm not part of the Peace and Freedom Party. I'm not part of any of those parties. I consider myself a human being first, okay? And I think everybody else should consider themselves to be human beings first, okay? All of that partisan shit helps to divide and conquer the people. It really does. So try to start to think of yourselves as human beings living on this one planet that we all share. As human beings, we all basically have the same priorities. We want to, be healthy to the best of our ability. Most of us. I was fat for a long time. I broke my back. I've had all kinds of problems. But, we want to have a roof over our heads. We want to have food in our bellies. We want the children in our lives, in our families, to grow up to live happy and healthy lives. I mean, we all have hobbies. We're all the same, basically. All of us have those same conditions that are a part of life. And I think we have to look at that common ground as individuals, hopefully to help us come together rather than drive us apart and so forth. War. I call them now the 9/11 wars because that's what they are. All of the wars that have started since the day of 9/11 have been done in the name of 9/11. And it's actually a law. There's something called the Authorization for Use of Military Force that was written after 9/11 to go specifically after those responsible for 9/11. Now I have a question. How many millions have we killed, wounded, displaced, tortured, renditioned, that had absolutely nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks? The national security state, all of the Patriot Act and the Freedom Act that replaced the Patriot Act. I mean, all these civil liberties that we have lost since 9/11, they should not have happened. It should not have happened. The militarization of the police should not have happened. And I'm not saying I don't want to do whatever it takes to ensure that a 9/11 event never happens again, because I don't ever want to have to see that happen again. I'm just saying that the national security state, the spying, the warrantless wiretapping, that's all, justified by the same authorization for use of military force that was written after 9/11 to go specifically after those responsible for 9/11. So now we're all possible terrorists, and they can listen to us, they can read our emails, they can do all kinds of things. And it has to stop. It has to stop. The wars have to stop. We have to pay reparations to countries that we've harmed over the years. The individuals responsible for these wars need to be tried. They need to go to prison. See, a lot of people think that they should be killed and so forth. And I would much rather see these people in solitary confinement with no light, just 3 times a day they get meals and whatnot for the rest of their lives. That's what they deserve. And my God, I lost my train of thought, but this all has to stop. There needs to be truth about how these wars started, why these wars started. It has to be common knowledge among everyone. These wasn't about freedom. It wasn't about democracy. It was about that there was minerals, valuable minerals, like $3 trillion worth of lithium deposits that were found that the Russians actually found during the Afghanistan-Russia war, and we knew about that. It does have to do with pipelines. There was something called the TAPI pipeline that was never constructed, but there are other pipelines being discussed to be built, to go through Syria or whatever. I mean, projecting America's hegemony. We're the only superpower in the world anymore, even though anybody who has a freaking nuke can be considered a superpower in this world. But, we're projecting, we're saying this is our world, and we're the ones that are taking control. That's essentially what we're doing. When Obama came into office, one of the first things he did was change the war on terror to what's called overseas contingency operations, because that was a better sell, I guess, than the war on terror. And he continued and expanded on all of Bush's worst policies concerning the national security state, concerning the wars. He was the worst president in history towards whistleblowers. He was just so horrible. And, we have Donald Trump and other people responsible for bringing us the birther controversy, the bullshit birther racist controversy that took up most of our time, along with the Benghazi incident. And meanwhile, all of these other things, Obama took part in signing statements that he said he would never do during the campaign. There were so many things that Obama did that were crimes. It was just portrayed differently by the media. There needs to be a false left-right paradigm in this country. That's how it works. Look at our media. The cable news, we have left media with MSNBC, supposedly CNN, I guess. And then we have Fox News, which is all rabid right-wing all the time. But I'll get into the media a little bit later. This country has a history of working with Al-Qaeda. This is a fact. We worked with them during the Afghanistan-Russia war, and we were told that after that practice no longer took place, but it did. It happened through the 90s and the Balkans and in the Caucasus, and it happened all the way up until the day of 9/11. They found that it was an important, or not important, but a good way of doing things for their agenda, essentially, and so they held on to it. And even after 9/11, during the war on terror, we were supporting Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda-linked groups in places like Libya, in Syria, who knows where else we were doing it. And, we had John McCain fly down there and say, hey, I love you guys. You're the best, and so on and so forth. So people need to understand that. We have worked with Al-Qaeda, and I've often found that Al-Qaeda can be whatever there are many definitions for Al-Qaeda, and I can go through them for you, but I've always found that Al-Qaeda is whatever our government needs, wherever and whenever it needs it to be. That's like an overall definition, but there's many different definitions. There are people who are caught through FBI entrapment that, were involved in terrorist plots created by our own FBI. That was taking place, or may still very well be taking place. There are people who legitimately believe they're part of Al Qaeda, that they share the philosophies of Osama bin Laden and whoever else. There are Al Qaeda people that are used by us for proxy wars, against people like Iran or Syria, Libya. Like I said, it's such a fucking horrible contradiction to the war on terror, and it's a horrible practice. Horrible. We give weapons to people who knows what they'll do with them. So that's a horrible practice. We helped create ISIS. Yes, we did. We trained fighters in Jordan to be sent into Syria. At one time, we were supplying weapons and intelligence to Al Qaeda linked groups. My God, what happened was, we and Bandar Bush, Prince Bandar from Saudi Arabia, we sent in fighters to try and take out Assad. And what happened was they commingled, essentially, with the people of Iraq, who were absolutely furious at us, for some reason. Maybe it was killing upwards of 1.25 million people, or Abu Ghraib, or so many of the horrible, horrible things that we've done, like depleted uranium, which got our own soldiers sick, which killed so many of their people. There's no statute of limitations on the anger those kinds of things create. And then we had the al-Maliki government, which was just horrible. And so all of the people that in Jordan, or Syria rather, that we were supporting and stuff, combined with those millions of Iraqis that are absolutely pissed with us. And that's how, if you want to say there's an ISIS, that's essentially what ISIS is. Now, I don't know whether they are controlled or work with as much as Al Qaeda. I don't know. To me, ISIS became the new Al Qaeda, essentially. When Al Qaeda wasn't scary enough anymore, suddenly we had ISIS. I mean, that's what it looked like to me. The national security state is absolutely fucking ridiculous. I don't want anything that I have to be monitored by anybody in government unless I'm suspected of committing a crime. Okay? I don't commit crimes that... Oh my God. I'm not a perfect human being. I'm not perfect. I do some things that might not be considered nice, I guess. I don't know. Just like any other human being. Again, we're all human beings. But I don't want that kind of monitoring. I don't want police to be militarized. And I don't want police, fighting against the black people. I thought we resolved all these issues years ago. The racism and the bigotry. But then Trump comes along, and suddenly all of the racists and bigots come out of the woodwork. And the whole Russiagate thing. As far as I'm concerned, this is how Trump won. Okay, but first off, this is how Trump should have been treated, okay? During the newscast, think of this setting. At the end, someone says, finally tonight, our favorite idiot candidate had this to say. That's how Donald Trump should have been treated throughout the entire elections. Instead, the media decided to give him $4 to $6 billion worth of free publicity. The Clinton campaign had what was called the Pied Piper strategy, which was to take the worst possible candidate, Trump, and pump him up so as to give Hillary an easy candidate to beat. The Bernie Sanders people, and I was told that it didn't have as much of an effect as I thought, but the people were furious that the DNC screwed over Bernie and made Hillary the candidate when everybody wanted Bernie. And I don't like Bernie Sanders at all. I don't trust him any further than I can throw him, which is not very far. So, that there was another thing. The FBI director, I think it was Comey, the day before the elections made a statement, and Hillary even actually blamed him for her loss in the beginning, and then the whole Russiagate thing started. And Rachel Maddow, you use this word Russia so often. I don't think it means what you think it means, and that's a Princess Bride reference. Again, the national security state. I used to read about things called Echelon, and that was some scary shit. All those 5 countries or whatever, they were spying on each other because we weren't allowed to spy on ourselves, so they would share. They could spy on us and share that information, and that's how it worked. And today, I can't imagine what's being done. I'm an activist. I'm a regular human being activist. And I've been doing this a long time. I've done some things that might have put me on some kind of list, like chaining myself to the White House fence, or writing 2 books about the lies of 9/11, about the 9/11 truth movement, about my experiences in this battle for truth, justice, and accountability for 9/11. The environment. My God, the environment. How many more stories do we have to read about animals like dolphins that get washed up onto the shores, and tons of fish dying in certain areas? And I have a couple of friends who live in Florida, and they have absolutely horrid environmental conditions. The Everglades are being destroyed, and that's an important part of their ecology, of their environment. And I can't imagine the BP oil spill having anything to do with that. That was such a horrible disaster, and it absolutely permanently destroyed that region. Look at the fires in California. I feel so bad for people who lost their homes and stuff like that. You got to start caring about that stuff. I used to never care about that stuff, but we have to start caring about that stuff. Because this is the only planet that we have, okay? And don't we want to survive? Don't we want our next generations to survive? And all of that? I think we do. All right, now our media. Oh, let me count the ways. In the early 1980s, there was a book written, and Mickey Huff, my good friend, could tell you the name of it, where they talked about how dangerous it was that 50 companies owned the majority of the media outlets in this country. And today, I think it's something like 6 different companies own all of the media in this country. All right, so everything that we hear, essentially, it's just bullshit distractions for the most part. And they don't cover the important stories. They do not. I mean, all right, just to give you an example, in 2006, okay, September 2006, the documentary entitled 9/11 Press for Truth, which was based on the famous 9/11 or complete 9/11 timeline by Paul Thompson, and featured the famous Jersey girls, the widows that were responsible essentially for the creation of the 9/11 Commission. It was about them. And it was released at the same time as Path to 9/11, which was an ABC film, which was just factually incorrect. Even the actors had problems. There was such a big farce. But this one movie that brought to light, how hard the 9/11 Commission was, that brought to light some of the lies that we've been told, that brought to light the fact that the family members weren't satisfied with the 9/11 Commission, that the 9/11 Commission only answered 30% of their questions. If this movie had been shown on national TV during prime time, I think this would have been a different world. And yet, every single media outlet in this country, with the exception of one local news outlet, ignored it completely. And it's not like they didn't know that it existed. We had email campaigns and stuff letting media networks know, and they did not cover it. This would have been such an amazingly important event. Another example, those same Jersey Girls were the September 11th advocates. They called for a new investigation in February of 2008 when it was found that Philip Zelikow was speaking with White House Deputy White House Chief of Staff Karl Rove at the time, that he may very well have been taking direction from Karl Rove. Karl Rove was actually an architect, somewhat, of the 9/11 Commission, which was just filled with corruption and compromise. Just horrible. It was a slap in the face to the families, to the people of the world, because I've said millions of times, we were all attacked that day. I mean, there are family members, there are survivors, but we were all hit emotionally that way. At least if you're empathic or have empathy, we were all hit hard that day. So the media, turn off your goddamn television sets, okay? You don't need to watch the news, the local news, the cable TV news. It's fucking brainwashing, is what it is, and that may sound crazy, but go look it up. Go look at those, those scripted videos that hundreds of different news outlets across the country say the same exact fucking thing to everybody. Turn off your TVs. If you want to know what's going on in the world, go look it up on news stations. Go look it up on news stations from across the world. Get different perspectives on things. If you want to watch TV shows, every single damn television show that is available on TV is available online for you to watch with absolutely no commercials. And I can't think of any better television show than one that has no commercials. I want to say that fighting against the wars without acknowledging the fact that we were lied to about 9/11 is like trying to play baseball without a bat. It's like trying to play hockey without a stick. It's like trying to play basketball without a ball. Okay? So all of the anti-war groups, Code Pink, Answer, they need to acknowledge the fact that we were lied to about a great many things concerning 9/11. I don't care if you're afraid of losing your pulpits, that you're afraid of being called a conspiracy theorist, which is just a goddamn phrase that has been used endlessly for years to either discredit someone or to silence dissent. Conspiracies happen every single day in courts of law. People are charged with a conspiracy to commit, okay? And by definition, 9/11 itself was a conspiracy. You either agree with the account from the government concerning that conspiracy, or you don't. And I and millions of others do not. So, to be afraid of being called to be called a name because you're doing the right thing, I guarantee people like Chris Hedges and Glenn Greenwald and all those people, if they actually started to cover all of the lies of 9/11, even the lies we don't have answers to, there are so many of those, my God, their readership, their popularity, I can almost guarantee that it would grow exponentially. So those people, you got to start doing that. You got to start acknowledging. You don't have to talk about 9/11 all the time. You don't have to argue with people who have all these theories. All you have to do is report on the facts that concern the lies we were told. That's all you got to do when you're talking about things that are taking place in the post 9/11 world. Any of the 9/11 wars that are taking place, any of the things that are happening in these countries that are taking place, you have to look through it through the lens that we were lied to about 9/11, that there's no justification for any of these wars taking place, any of them, that there's no justification for the national security state at all, because we were lied to. It's a simple and an absolute fact. We were, okay? I wrote a long time ago an article, I think it was called Progressives Need to Start Covering the Cover-Up of 9/11 or something like that. And in that article I wrote how things like whistleblowers like Bradley Manning or Chelsea Manning, supporting him was a no-brainer. Supporting things about the environment are no-brainers. Things like supporting violence against black people through cops and stuff, that's a no-brainer thing. You support these things. And I've always tried to do that. Always tried to do that. But I've also covered the 9/11 issue. And that's all I'm asking people with voices to do, is to just look at things through the filter of the fact that we were lied to about 9/11. That's all I'm asking. And I hope that you do that, because I know that you're aware that we were lied to about a great many things. At least I know a lot of you are aware. So anyway, all of these causes that we have, we need to come together as a people, united as one against our common foe, which just happens to be the oligarchy that runs this country. Okay? The lobbyists in D.C. are just disgusting. These people in D.C. are supposed to be working for us, but they're all bought and paid for by big oil, by big pharmaceutical, by big defense, by big Wall Street, by AIPAC, by Saudi Arabia lobbies. AIPAC, I just watched a documentary recently called The Lobby USA. And it scared the crap out of me. It really did. And I recommend people watch that. With regard to 9/11 right now, the families have decided to support them with that. There's a grand jury that was started, or there might be a grand jury in New York concerning the buildings. And Bob McIlvaine, who was one of my best friends, he's very excited about that. So that also needs to be discussed. But anyway, this video is about coming together and fighting against those that deserve our attention, and it's not each other. Divide and conquer is one of the oldest and most used techniques among the powers that be for thousands of years. But we need to come together, and I guarantee that we far, far outnumber them. Okay? So, please think about the things that I've said, and I can only hope for a better day.